Kids can develop OCD and anxiety disorders just like adults can. But when it happens to kids, it tends to look a little bit different, and their experience seems to be a little bit different than ours. So, today we're going to look at the difference between a child's experience of OCD and anxiety and adults' experience of OCD and anxiety, and what that tells us about the process underneath the problem itself. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Anxious Truth Podcast. This is episode 331. We are recording in November of 2025. In case you are watching or listening from the future, welcome. I am Drew Linsalata, creator and host of the Anxious Truth Podcast. I'm a therapist specializing in the treatment of anxiety and anxiety disorders, practicing in New York State. I am also a former sufferer of the very things we talk about here on this podcast, an author, a psychoeducator, a public advocate for people who are struggling with anxiety and OCD and related issues. So if you are new to the Anxious Truth Podcast, you just sort of stumbled in today. The presentation of OCD and anxiety disorders in children and how their presentation and their experience seems to be a little bit different than ours. So we have the same diagnoses, the same mental health issues, but it looks and feels a little bit different for a kid than it does for an adult. So this episode is not just for parents of children with anxiety problems or children with anxiety problems. It's really for anybody who deals with these problems in general, because the difference between a child's experience and an adult's experience and the very same problem tells us something about the process that drives OCD, that drives anxiety. So I think it's going to be a really great conversation. We have Natasha Daniels with us today. Natasha is a very well-respected child therapist that is also an anxiety and OCD specialist. She has all the training, all the credentials from all the right places. She puts out a tremendous amount of incredibly helpful content on social media about this particular topics. We'll link all of that in the show notes in the description of this video. So Natasha was nice enough to get together with me today to talk about this topic, which I think is super interesting and probably helpful for anybody who is struggling with these things, or even trying to support a child who is dealing with OCD or anxiety issues. Before we get into it with Natasha, just a quick reminder that the Anxious Truth is definitely more than just this podcast episode or this YouTube video. There's a ton more resources on my website, including books and low-cost workshops and social media content and a lot of free stuff at theanxioustruth.com. So if you like what you see here today, or you dig what you're getting in the podcast, go check out theanxioustruth.com and all the links and the places that leads, because there's some good stuff there that people seem to feel is very helpful, and hopefully you will too. So let's get to the conversation. We'll have Natasha join us in a second. We're going to talk about kids, OCD, anxiety, and how their experience is different than ours as adults and what that really means. So let's get to that right now. Okay, as promised, sitting next to me virtually, Natasha Daniels. Hello, Natasha. Thank you for coming
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So just give people like the Reader's Digest version. Who the heck are you? As if they don't already know. I'm sure they do. And yeah, what do you work on?
I am a child and anxiety OCD therapist. Been doing that for 2 decades. And I'm a mom to three kids with these struggles. So right now, 14, 16, and 22. So it's part of my life.
Mm. Yeah, that can't be easy.
No, that's not fun.
Yeah. No, I'm sure it's not. But I can appreciate that, because we're bringing in like training and experience and clinical experience and your lived experience as a mom with kids that have struggled.
Yeah, and I think that does make a big difference
Yeah.
because it's one thing to understand it intellectually or collegially, but it's another thing to like have to apply that and try to help your own kids.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it does make a big difference. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's the theory. This is what I'm going to put forward. And like, feel
Okay.
free to like tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. It's just a chat, right? So when we are working with kids who develop, we'll just use OCD as the example, but I think it tends to apply to the principles of the other anxiety or related anxiety disorders, and we can talk about that. When you're dealing with really young kids who develop OCD and they are compelled to do these rituals or compulsions, is there a story attached to that? Can they tell you what it means that they feel that way, or what it means if they don't do the ritual?
Yeah, and I love this question because I feel like nobody asks it, and very few people work with very young children with OCD.
Yeah.
And I happen to have that niche for some reason. When I had my private practice, like every young child with OCD would come to see me. So we're talking about young, like 3 and 4 and 5.
Yep.
And those very young children did not have a story attached, which to me was very indicative of kind of the biology of OCD. When I would continue seeing them, they would have a story eventually, like
Yeah.
why do I need to do this, and they'll fill in the gaps. but they just had the compulsion.
So what were they experiencing? Is it I hate to, I don't want to minimize it, but is it just discomfort then? If I don't do this, I feel bad. I feel uncomfortable.
It was repetitive behaviors,
Yeah.
and it looked different because they were fitting into those little subtypes, which I think is very physiological too.
Mhm.
And so I mean, I remember I had one little girl, she'd have to check her fingers all the time. She's just checking her fingers. So there were some kids that had checking behavior, some kids that had compulsive reassurance, some kids that had to just rewind. You know, you tuck me in, now we have to redo it again. It didn't feel right. A lot of like just right type of stuff
Yep.
were like the early indications.
Right. Is there a story around what happens if you don't tuck me in again, or it just doesn't feel right?
No, it just needs to be done again. And a lot of repetitive behaviors, like why do I have to check my fingers? I don't know,
I
but
just
I have to check them.
yeah.
Or I have to check. I remember I had one child and they had to check that their name was on everything. And if you ask them like why, they didn't know. They just had to have like it had to be their name on things or they couldn't do it. And
Yep.
over time, as I saw these kids, their OCD evolved. There was a narrative that got created to fill in the gaps. But when you look at, and I'm not a neurobiologist, but I have friends that are, and uh, and they help me understand the brain. And OCD and the brain.org, I think, is the website, has a really great video of just the science behind OCD and how it's a very physiological disorder
Mhm.
of that circuitry getting stuck. And you see that in very young kids. They're just on rinse and repeat, like they don't know, metaphorically,
Yeah.
they just don't know why they're not getting that off switch or why they have to be stuck in these cycles.
Okay. So sadly, as you see them and they progress, which we hope wouldn't happen, but it happens. What about the kid that doesn't make it? And I feel like I'm leading, like I'm asking the witness leading questions. I don't mean to do that, but what about the part where the kid starts at 3 or 4 years old, which is really tragic. That kid is genuinely uncomfortable. By the way, this is not minimizing their experience. That is a real struggle for this little kid. If you can intervene and the treatment tends to take hold, can they overcome this problem before they hit my brain now has a meaning making mechanism and starts to fill in the gaps with a story? Or are they just too young for that?
No, I've seen a lot of kids do really well. I mean, unfortunately, OCD can be a very cyclical disorder. So they
Yeah.
do well for a few years and they come back, and they need to
Yep.
rebuild their skills at maybe a different developmental level.
Mhm.
But it kind of goes back to the fundamental reason why exposure response prevention works so well is because you're overriding that glitch in your brain, which any child could do at any age, and not ride those neural pathways to grow OCD. And so when you resist that false message that your brain is like, do that again or check that again, whatever it may be, because it'll be different for each person, um, you're learning how to sit with the discomfort. And that's really at the crux of OCD treatment and anxiety treatment is can I sit with this uncomfortable feeling, override my brain and get through it and get to the other side? And the answer is yes. But a lot of times we put so much meaning on the story that we get stuck in the mud.
Yeah. And I think that's what I see in my practice. It's so difficult for people. It's not that the mechanics of the treatment are wrong or don't work, but the rationale for why you should allow that big uncomfortable feeling to peak and fall naturally without intervening, the meaning making machine, the story around why I feel that way starts to butt in. Like, yeah, no, okay, I get that part, but I can't allow that because that will mean insert horrible outcome here. So if you're dealing with a kid who just like developmental stages give us the opportunity to see this difference, if there is no story around that and the kid can just learn to surf through the discomfort and winds up not ritualizing or compulsing as a result, what does that tell us about the story? The objection to the treatment is, but the meaning tells me it's not safe to do ERP.
Yes, 100%. And actually, they're easier to work with because it's easy to just say, and I did this with my own kids, with my youngest daughter,
Hmm.
Mr. Bossy wants you to do what? And we don't feed Mr. Bossy. I actually just wrote a children's book called Chloe's my oldest daughter, Chloe and the Bossy Cloud. And it's just about that, just like the personification of OCD. OCD wants you to do something or avoid something. And when you do it, it grows bigger. And when you don't do it, it gets smaller. Like fundamentally, even though it's easier said than done, that's at the heart of OCD.
Yeah. So if you take away the narrative structure that we develop as we get older and mature and our brains develop, we're just left with I love this by the way, Mr. Bossy. Like just no, you don't listen to Mr. Bossy. It's totally fine. Like just let that be there. The same outcome can happen. Like the treatment works or at least has some positive outcomes. And yeah, you're right. It's cyclical, unfortunately, with OCD, but at least initially, absent the narrative that our like connection making machine that develops will write for us. Yeah, it's okay. Like, yeah, you could. We're just going to learn to be uncomfortable. I'll sit with you while you be uncomfortable, and you'll feel better, and it'll be okay. Oh, okay, cool. It's safe to do that because Miss Therapist or Mom said it's safe to do that, and I'm okay with that. I just buy into it.
Right. Yeah,
Mm,
100%.
yeah,
And I think the hard part is that when you merge into the story, you're already kind of lost in that whole facade.
yep,
But I always say to kids, and I say to my own kids too, what does OCD want you to do or avoid? That's all you have to ask is what does OCD want you to do or avoid?
yeah,
And then you don't do that.
right.
That's the hard part. I mean, that is hard. I'm making it, sound very easy. That is the hard part, but everything else is a distraction.
But I think the interesting thing about that is you're right, and I get it. It's a simple plan, but very hard to execute because it's going to require some courage and all of those things. But one of the things that I find that's interesting is the narrative, like, but it's not safe to allow that. It's not safe to learn that lesson. That is not a correct lesson because if I don't obey this, Mr. Bossy, there's now a story that has developed that tells me what will happen, and I can't take that risk. So it's so hard to get an older child or an adult to buy into why it's safe to do the ERP homework because the
Yeah.
story tells them, and it's, yeah, I understand the law. I mean, sure, you hear this all the time. Yeah, I get it. Thanks for telling me about emotional processing theory and all the rationale behind ERP, but it doesn't matter. It still feels way too risky to do that. I don't believe that it's safe to do this.
Yeah. And I think that's why understanding on a very simplistic level the brain
Hmm.
and understanding the biology and realizing this is a biological issue.
Yeah,
That's why I love OCD and the brain. I have nothing to do with that website. I'm not promoting it,
yeah. I'll
but I
link
just
that, by the way. I'll link that site in the show notes. And
yeah, I mean, it's just they made a very simple video,
yeah,
and I'll show kids that video, even though
yeah,
it's not meant for kids, because it really helps explain that it's not in your head. It's like it's in your biology,
yeah,
and you're overriding a biological urge, and that's a hard thing to do. But it's a false biological urge,
mm,
and a lot of times people are focusing on the intrusive thought. Like parents will say to me, "How do I get my child to have less intrusive thoughts?" And that's the wrong question. It's how do I get my kids to be able to survive these intrusive thoughts and not get tangled up in them?
yeah,
And that's true for any person, adult with OCD, is it's not the intrusive thought that's the problem. It's the meaning that you're attaching to it, which is the story.
yeah.
Um, and that is the hard part of treatment.
Yeah, and that makes sense, the biology underneath it. So, I encounter this loop, and then as when my mind develops enough to build a narrative and fill this is I don't understand why this is, but I have to understand because that's what my brain gets paid to do once I hit 6, 8 years old. I'm going to make a story about what that means, what that loop means. And now it gets even harder to say, "Oh, I just have to allow the thought." Uh, uh, yeah. So
Right.
yeah, here's one of the things that I thought was really interesting. So there's so much in the third wave we're talking about acceptance and mindfulness based treatments, right?
Mhm.
That's all the thing. When we get mindful, if I'm going to teach somebody how to use mindful detachment, like an MCT or that sort of stuff, like you're kind of going back to that the kid just sees the experience. I'm just going to look at the experience without following the meaning. You can't turn off the meaning making machine. Once it's built, it's built. It doesn't get paid to
Mhm.
turn off. But can you observe it like a kid? You're actually backing up to the way a kid might experience their thoughts and emotions. No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think acceptance commitment therapy can be a great supplement
Yeah.
because it's learning and meditation and mindfulness. It's learning how to separate out what your thoughts are from the emotion attached to it and the action, which becomes the compulsion, whether
Yeah.
it's mental or physical. And so um, that's a great skill to build, and
It's
it's
just so
powerful.
yeah, because it's so hard to get an adult to say, well, okay, we're going to do this exposure now. And well, I'm gonna get really uncomfortable doing the exposure. I know we knew it was gonna do that. We expected it to happen. Okay, but I can't continue. Well, why can't you continue? Well, because I can't take the risk that my parents will die if I don't do this thing. Okay, but that's not you're going to the story. Can we just get back to I'm really uncomfortable right now? I'm really afraid right now, which is I think maybe the way a young child might experience it or describe it. I'm just really afraid or uncomfortable.
Yeah. And when they understand the science behind it, I talk about an exposure. ERP is like going to the OCD gym.
Mm,
And so OCD, I like personifying it. I've been doing these weird reels where I'm like in a black hoodie and I'm OCD, and just to see it as it is. And I don't take that notion. And some people like the style of like, anxiety is there to protect you or whatever. I don't feel like OCD is a protection. I mean, it's telling you all sorts of horrible things. I just can't personify it in a compassionate sort of way. It's not even about the amygdala, it's about a different part of the brain. I
yeah.
won't even go there. But um, when you're doing exposures, I always tell kids, look, you're going to the OCD gym. You got this bully. It's telling you things nonstop, and it's like a mafia boss. It's like, go wash your hands. Go tell your parents I'm going to kill them. Like it's bossy and harmful. And we're going to go pick up some weights, and we're going to practice training how you handle these intrusive thoughts, so that when they really come, you're like, I've been doing this all day. So I'm going to trigger those thoughts without OCD, and then I'm going to like practice just sitting with it, not doing the RP, the response prevention, the compulsion. And now when you really come, I'm like, yeah, I can handle this.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think when I explain it that way to at least kids, I think kids are easier to reach because they haven't been living with this for 2, 3 decades, 4 decades. But um, they get it. It doesn't make it easier, but they get it. Like that they're literally in training. And that's what exposure is.
Do you find less resistance then? Okay, let's do it. I mean, nobody wants to be uncomfortable. So it's not like, yeah, let's go be really uncomfortable. Let's do it. No, but the resistance that we encounter when we treat adults, which is okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I'm still left feeling I'm about to kill my whole family if I don't do this thing to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think very young kids are easier. I
Yeah.
mean, even my own kids were super easy when they were young because, like you said before, like my parents telling me this, my therapist is telling me this, they're adults, they're safe, they must know, so I can override this.
Mhm.
And then I always offer incentives. And so we had bravery points at my house. In my practice, I would use bravery points and make it fun. And so that tends to move the dial too, like that there's a little bit of like, there's something sweet in the pot
Yeah,
to do this scary thing.
it's really cool. Okay, I love it. So I know that there are going to be people listening right now that the most common thing that I hear in my community is either I'm here because my kid is suffering and I want to learn, which is really great. I love you guys for being here for that. Or I have anxiety and or OCD, and now I'm starting to see it in my child.
Yeah.
Help. What do I do? How do you respond to that person? No
Well,
pressure. Just give them one line that will change everything. Here we go.
let me, like, channel that in. I mean, it's everything I do. I mean, I provide global resources for parents
Yeah.
raising kids with anxiety and OCD, and I have my own, like, social anxiety disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, so I get it as a parent, like, we're often triggered by our kids as well. The ultimate goal is to create a therapeutic home environment where I mean, I have 3 kids with these issues, and I have my own issues, and so we're not just gonna put out fires, we're gonna develop language on how we talk about it. We set up challenges all the time. We call each other out on things. So creating your own tools as a parent, I
Mhm.
think sometimes this idea of like, let me just drop them off to the therapist for 50 minutes a week, it just won't cut it with this. We have to have our skills in line, and that's really important. And taking care of yourself is important.
Yeah. That's really great. I mean, it's so interesting because I hear that all the time, not from you and other therapists who specialize in treating kids. It's not, and this is for everybody, adults also. It's not what happens in the session; it's what happens between the sessions. And like, it's so
Oh
important when you're dealing with kids. Mom, dad, the family, whatever the siblings, they become part of the team. Within the context that they can fill. They can't be the therapist, but for an adult, listen to that. Like, it's so hard. Keep in mind that if you are struggling today because you're on your own trying to do the between session stuff, you
yeah.
know, it does make it harder. That's why you want a kid to have extra support and coaching and cheerleading and reminders from the family and the support system. Really helpful for them. Harder for them without that, no?
Yeah, I mean, really long-term success is dependent on the parent. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure or anything. If you're listening right now, don't no
Yeah,
pressure.
but I mean, it's also empowering to think, "You know what? I actually can have an impact on this." Um, I can have an impact in not enabling OCD. I can have an impact in, cheerleading my child, providing them skills, doing how I respond to OCD is a really big part of OCD. OCD is a family affair. So it involves the whole family. It wreaks havoc in the family.
Mhm.
And if you don't know how to calm the storm by building up your own skills, getting your own support, it'll be an uphill battle more likely than not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Love it. So let's come back to, I don't want to keep you another 5 or 10 minutes tops because you're being very generous with your times here. If a young child can do this work and come out the other side, and they may wind up back in therapy later, we get that. But if they can come out the other side without the story. So an adult, if I see a 4-year-old with OCD and that's presenting a certain way, an adult with OCD may tell a story about what that kid is experiencing because their mind is going to make up a story, right? Oh, he must feel like this is going to happen, but he doesn't. So you attach the story because you have that machinery developed already. But if the kid can do it without challenging a story, my assertion here and what prompted the call to you and then this chat, the whole thing is like, what does that tell our adult clients about the story? Like this is this is a good indicator that it's okay to drop that argument, that it just feels too risky. And can we get back to it feels very uncomfortable? Because I think that's what the kid is doing.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think the story is the smoke screen.
Yeah.
It's the quicksand that you get stuck in.
Mhm.
And it's the tool that OCD uses to kind of keep you there. And it really is a biological glitch in your brain
Yeah.
that you have to override by sitting with the uncomfortable feeling and letting it ride out.
Yeah. And in the end, what do we learn?
We learn that everybody can get better.
Oh, that's so good. I wasn't expecting that, but that was a win right there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that you say that. That offers so much hope, which is really great. What because I'm proactively thinking about the comment section. But what about when they say that OCD can never be cured, it can only be managed? What's your take on that? For
I
kids and
think
otherwise.
what did you say?
For kids and otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think they say that because those are lifelong skills that you want to have in your back pocket. It's just like diabetes; it can be managed, but you have diabetes still, even though you know, you're getting properly treated.
Mhm.
There are lots of kids and adults who live with subclinical OCD, where it is asymptomatic. They're just chugging along in life. Um, you don't want to take your eye off the ball. I think that's why a lot of OCD therapists say, can't be cured, quote unquote,
Yeah.
because your brain can get stuck again. But when you recognize that, like in my house, I'll see a little baby weed. My daughter all of a sudden is stuck on something and now something she can't touch and now something's a problem. And we're going to target that right away. I remember one time it was like within 24 or 48 hours, like full blown OCD new theme. It was like veins and blood. And it was like all of a sudden she couldn't touch me because she was going to squish my vein and she was going to harm me, like harm OCD type of thing.
Yeah.
And within 48 hours, she was looking at emoji, little blood signs. Then we built it up. Then she was looking at things that I didn't even want to look at. And it was done. It was like baby weed, pulled it out right away.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want people to not drop the ball. We want you to be proactive and not say, "Oh, I'm done with OCD. That was a really rough chapter in my life. Moving on."
Mhm.
But there are people who live like that, subclinical, for the rest of their lives. So I think it is important to weave in hope and say, OCD doesn't have to dominate your life ever again when you work on it.
Mm.
You just want to build those skills and keep that maintenance going.
Yeah. Yeah. And the maintenance often is we're always looking at the impact, right? I mean, oh, does that mean I'm never going to have that thought or I'm never going to have that sensation again? No,
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean that. But what you may notice is that I have same thing in my practice. It's like, oh, I think it came back. Well, why do you think it came back? Well, I keep having that same thought again. Okay, well, how much time did that derail you for yesterday? Oh, I don't know, about 5 minutes. And why are you calling me that again? Like, what's the question? So that
Right.
used to derail you for 2 weeks, and now it derailed you for 5 minutes. You're
Exactly. So it's not about the thought, it's about the anxiety or discomfort that's attached to it.
yeah,
100%.
yeah, I hear you. Very good. I so appreciate you taking the time. I really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have anything else you want to add? I mean, we're a little brief today, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. Anything else you want to add to this?
No, I appreciate that. I think, if you're a parent listening to this and you are concerned about your child, get your own support. I mean, whether you have a therapist or not, learn
Mhm.
your own skills, get your own support because there's so much power in having a front view of your child and their struggles. You're with them 24/7.
Oh,
So,
yeah, love it. Thank you so much. It's great. Well, as soon as we sign off, I have to go look for your reels wearing the black hoodie. Like,
They're out there.
like the Natasha as the Grim Reaper. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. What I will do is, if you guys hang in there, I'll come back after Natasha and I hang up, and I will give you all of your links. So you send me all the links you want me to put in there. OCD in the brain. I'm definitely going to link that because I don't know
Yeah.
that site, so I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
But
It's great.
thank you so much. You're welcome back here anytime.
I appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
No, you're very welcome. Okay, we are back. I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did too. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much to Natasha Daniels for coming and spending some of her valuable time here. I love that she shares not only knowledge, not only clinical experience over a long period of time, but her personal, her lived experience as a mom supporting kids with these particular problems. It's also kind of cool that she shares a little bit about herself, her generalized anxiety disorder, her socialized anxiety disorder. It makes her super relatable. And actually, she's just kind of fun to talk to. So anyway, thank you again to Natasha. If you want to find more about Natasha, if you go to theanxioustruth.com/331, I will link all of her resources, her social media profile, so you can follow along with her. I highly suggest you do that. She's really great. And I will definitely link that OCD in the brain site because I never heard of it before. So now I'm going to go learn something from that too. So I appreciate that pointer. What is the takeaway today? I think the takeaway today is if you are a parent, and whether you're an anxious person or not, you're a parent who's struggling to try to support a child with OCD or an anxiety disorder. Well, Natasha gave us some really good tips, and I think maybe follow along with her on social media and access her resources for more on that, because she's a really good source for that I trust. If you are an adult struggling with your own OCD or your own anxiety disorder, and you find that you constantly get stuck because you can't just seem to believe that it really is safe to take the risk of an exposure, well, today's episode was kind of all about that. If a little kid who hasn't yet developed the ability to build a story around the OCD experience can overcome OCD by learning how to tolerate discomfort without the associated story or narrative driven risk, then what does that say about our resistance as adults? Do not get me wrong, that resistance is real because it genuinely feels like you are taking a huge risk, but the feeling of the huge risk goes on top of the I don't want to be uncomfortable because the narrative seems so real. It seems so compelling. It seems so true, but that's just a function of a brain as it develops and starts to try to make sense of the world, both outside of your skin and inside. So keep that in mind. If you keep getting stuck because I know I got to do these exposures, I know I have to face my fear, I know I have to learn how to willfully tolerate or navigate through, I know that I can handle the discomfort, but I can't handle the perceived risk. Well, the experience of young children who haven't yet developed that story tells us something. It really is, in fact, safe to challenge that narrative because the narrative is not correct. It's never been correct. It will never be correct. The narrative that tells you that something horrible is going to happen if you do a driving exposure, or something horrible is going to happen if you don't compulse or ritualize, is incorrect. That is just the result. It's a smokescreen, like Natasha said. It is the result of a human brain that develops the ability to connect different things together, think symbolically, tell stories, and tries to make meaning of our experiences. It's what it gets paid to do. It doesn't get paid to shut up. So if you can challenge that belief in some way today by taking that risk, going through the discomfort and feeding information back into that story making, meaning making predictive model, well, things can change over time. Take a lesson from a 4-year-old. Crazy, but true, right? Anyway, thanks for stopping by today to listen. I appreciate that. Again, if you pop on over to theanxioustruth.com/331, I'll give you all the links from today's episode. You can get the full show notes from this episode. And while you're on my website, you can check out all the other resources that I have available if you're so inclined. And yeah, that's it. I will leave you by asking the same favor that I always do. If you are listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then leave a 5-star rating if you really like The Anxious Truth. And if you really, really like it, maybe take a minute or two and write a quick 1 or 2 sentence review as to why you like it, because then it helps other people find the podcast. It helps other people get the help that they might need. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, hello, YouTube. Thank you so much. Maybe subscribe to the channel and hit the like button on the video. Maybe even hit that notification icon so you know when I upload new videos. Why? It's a small thing for you, but it's a big thing for me because it actually tells YouTube that you appreciate that I take the effort to do this, because it is a lot of effort. And without that signal, they just kind of bury it, because there's nothing really fun about anxiety disorder. So we're trying to combat that a little bit, and I appreciate that. But no matter what you do, whether you leave a review, hit the like button, subscribe, or just listen or watch and maybe learn something from it, Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I really need in the end. So I'll be back again in 2 weeks with another topic on the anxious truth. I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about, but I'll be here. If you want a weekly podcast, you should check out Disordered. That's the podcast that I do with Josh Fletcher. We do release those every Friday, although curiously there is none this coming Friday, but normally every Friday we do release an episode of Disordered, and you can find all of those on our website at disordered.fm. So thanks again for coming, for giving me your time, giving me your attention. I hope it was helpful in some way, shape, or form. I will see you again in 2 weeks. Take care.